The Bible is the most widely read and distributed book in the world. It covers a large period of time. Most scholars believe it took at least 1,500 years for the entire text to be compiled from Genesis to Revelation. While it's completely understandable not everyone would subscribe to the doctrines outlined within its pages, seeing as how there are myriad faiths out there to choose from, many people doubt the historic accuracy of the Bible in general. But over the years, numerous archaeological discoveries have provided tangible proof of many of the events outlined in the biblical scriptures. Join FactsVerse as we thumb through one of the most famous books of all time and discover what portions of it may have been proven true by modern archaeological discoveries. King Solomon's Wall. In the first book of Kings, we learned that a figure named King Solomon built a wall that circled around the perimeter of Jerusalem. In early 2010, renowned archaeologist Eilat Mazar announced that such a wall was discovered along with several other defensive structures. When carbon dated, these fortifications appear to date to the time of Solomon in the 12th century BCE. The wall is approximately 230 feet long and measures roughly 20 feet high. It was found in the area where Jerusalem would have come to an end at that point in history, stretching between the city of David, which is now the Palestinian borough of Silwan, and the Temple Mount. Mazar's team of excavators also unearthed defensive structures in that area, including a gatehouse, a guard tower, and a royal building. It's Mazar's belief that only King David and his progeny King Solomon could have possibly built these edifices. Artifacts consisting of pieces of pottery and figurines have been found around the gatehouse that date back to the late 10th century BCE. That happens to be right around the time of Solomon's purported reign. One of the pottery pieces even had an inscription that read, "To the King." Evidence of a catastrophic great flood. In the first book of the Bible, Genesis, we read about a great flood that God cast upon the earth to purge it of the evil individuals and their false gods who had tarnished his creation. As the story goes, God saved one man, Noah, and his family and instructed him to build a giant ark to safely shield 2 animals of every species. While we've yet to discover hard evidence for an all-encompassing flood that occurred during the time of human existence, a combination of ancient historical texts and modern scientific analysis does seem to suggest that some kind of extreme and traumatic flooding in the biblical region might have actually transpired. To people who were living during this era, such an event would no doubt have given the impression of a global catastrophe. Excavations in what's now Iraq have revealed hard evidence of severe flooding sometime around 2900 BCE, mirroring ancient tales of flooding that supposedly occurred throughout Sumeria. Likewise, the regions of the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia are believed to have also undergone substantial changes in sea levels shortly after the last glacial period. Rapidly rising water levels would have submerged large regions of low-lying terrain. It's also well established that a massive flood some 7,000 years ago would have submerged more than 100,000 square miles of land in the region near the Black Sea. Beyond that, many ancient cultures also tell tales of a great deluge. A couple of these include the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh and the Roman and Greek story of Deucalion and Pyrrha. Prophet Isaiah. During an archaeological dig in Jerusalem, excavators discovered physical evidence that the biblical prophet Isaiah was actually a real person. In the Old Testament book that bears his name, Isaiah helped protect the ancient kingdom of Judah from an invasion led by the Assyrians. The proof that this team found was a small clay seal that evidently dates back to the 8th century BCE, the time period in which Isaiah lived. The seal contains the Hebrew name Yesha'yahu, or Isaiah as he's better known today. After his name, there's a small broken word that starts with the letter NVY, which many experts believe is likely part of the Hebrew word for prophet, Navi. Jesus Christ. Contrary to common belief, Jesus' last name was not actually Christ. The word Christ is, in fact, a title that means anointed one. Likewise, the historical Jesus would have not gone by the name Jesus either, as the letter J didn't become common in modern English until the 17th century. More than likely, he would have gone by the Hebrew name Yeshua, which translates to the modern-day name Joshua. Over the years, many people have claimed to have discovered physical evidence of Jesus Christ. For example, many people believe the famous Shroud of Turin was the actual burial linen that Christ was entombed in. And there are numerous groups that claim to have pieces of his crucifixion cross in their possession. But the problem with these supposed relics is the burden of proof. It's next to impossible to confirm conclusively that any of these items really are what believers say they are, even if they are proven to date back to the 1st century CE. It's not like we have a strand of Jesus' hair or a drop of blood to compare DNA. But even though we don't have any artifacts at the moment to conclusively prove the existence of Jesus, we do have the writing of the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, which makes mention of Jesus and his followers. Josephus wrote his historical accounts decades after the death of Jesus, and his texts state that he was a real person. Josephus confirms a man named Jesus was condemned to death on the cross by a man named Pilate. He went on to say Jesus seemed to appear to his followers, who didn't forsake him, 3 days after his death. Josephus also mentioned that the tribe of Christians were not extinct at the time of his writing. King David. For many years, scholars and historians doubted the existence of King David. According to the Old Testament, King David was one of 3 kings who ruled over united Israel sometime around the year 1000 BCE. When he was just a boy, he supposedly slew the giant Goliath with his trusty sling. And once he was an adult, he ruled under the direction of God as a mighty king. Up until the early 90s, however, there was no hard evidence to prove David was a real historical figure. In 1993, Hila Cook, a member of a team led by Israeli archaeologist Avraham Biron, discovered pieces of what would have been used to build an ancient stone wall that contained a Canaanite inscription that mentions the house of David. This fragment is now known as the Tel Dan Stele. While it doesn't provide much information other than that one phrase, it does confirm that David's dynasty ruled about 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. The Tower of Babel. In the book of Genesis, there's mention of a marvel of ancient architecture called the Tower of Babel. Reportedly, this pyramidal tower, or ziggurat, was built by descendants of Noah who survived the Great Deluge. As the story goes, they all shared a common language when they settled in the Mesopotamian city of Babylonia. But as seems to be the modus operandi of God's people in the Old Testament, these ancient folks eventually began to stray from God and decided to build a great tower that would reach to the heavens as a symbol of their pride. When God saw what they were up to, he struck the tower down and scattered the people throughout the land, confusing their languages so they could no longer communicate with each other. Although we have yet to find the specific ruins of the Tower of Babel, nearly 30 similar ziggurats have been discovered in ancient Babylon, which is just 55 miles away from the modern city of Baghdad, Iraq. King Nebuchadnezzar. Speaking of Babylon, the Hebrew book of 2 Kings makes mention of a Babylonian king named Nebuchadnezzar, who laid siege to Jerusalem, plundered its great temple for its loot and treasures, abducted the Judean king and his royal family, and exiled 10,000 skilled workers, officers, and artisans in Babylon. A decade later, Nebuchadnezzar returned to Jerusalem and leveled Solomon's temple. Then, in the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar is punished by God for his pride and goes insane. In his madness, he wanders the wilderness for 7 years, eating grass like an ox. While it's difficult to confirm the events of this specific story, archaeologists have discovered thousands of clay tablets and other inscribed objects from dig sites all across ancient Mesopotamia that mention Nebuchadnezzar by name. As far as the destruction of Jerusalem, archaeologists have discovered an incredible set of tablets known as the Babylonian Chronicles that confirm that he and his men did indeed level the city in a series of sieges that culminated in its destruction in 587 BCE. And beyond that, these clay artifacts also specifically mention that after Jerusalem's destruction, many people, including the royal family, were in fact taken into exile, just as the Bible says. Now it's time to hear from you. Can you think of any other biblical events that archaeology has proven to be true? Let us know in the comment section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First for more. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.